to a white person. When the bus driver ordered her to get up, she refused to say she paid her fare, and it was her constitutional right. She was arrested. Kofi said, "All I remember is that I was not going to walk up the bus voluntarily." Kofi said, later became the main witness in the federal lawsuit Border versus Gay, which ended the segregation on public transport in Alabama. Kofi was the founder of the Congress' first Martin Luther King parade in 1978 and the Black Heritage Society. Dr. fought for equal rights for African Americans for many years in Houston. He dedicated his life to preserving the legacy of Dr. King. He was a fighter for community and was willing to die for what's right. Dr. died, and the speaker at his funeral described him as a warrior. Quote unquote, "I'm going to remember that he chained himself to a tree that he had planted years ago in memory of Dr. King," said Houston City Councilman Michael Phobos at the time. There were also the catalysts for the renaming of South Pole Boulevard to Martin Luther King Boulevard and the creation of Salute Dr. King in Martin Park. Martin Luther King, the fourth president. While Martin Luther King needs no introduction, his impact will forever bear repeating. A Baptist minister and advocate, King became the most powerful leader in the civil rights movement until his death in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. King was going to lead a protest march in Smyrna with striking garbage worker in the city when he was assassinated. He reminded the world of the dream filled with hope, change, and equality. Quote unquote, "Darkness cannot drown out darkness. Only light can drown out light. Hate cannot drown out hate. Only love can do that." He was the youngest man to receive the Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 35, according to the Nobel Peace Prize.com. When notified of his selection, he said he would turn over the prize money, $54,123, to furthering the civil rights movement. And did you know his iconic, quote-unquote, "another green speech" was not first delivered on the set of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.? The first one occurred in North Carolina. The fifth person is Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American justice appointed to the United States Supreme Court in 1967. And of course, the greatest African-American with the highest position ever in the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, an African-American politician who served as the 44th President of the United States from 2009 to 2017. A member of the Democratic Party, Obama was the first African-American president of the United States. Ameda D.B. Harris, an African politician, an American politician and attorney who is the 49th and the current Vice President of the United States. She is the first female Vice President and the highest ranking female official in the U.S. history, as well as the first African American and the first Asian American Vice President. Carter Woodson, known as the father of the Black History Month. Carter Woodson in 1926 launched the annual February observance Negro History Week, which became Black History Month in 1976. Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history. Whitney was also considered a champion of women and a mentor. It's Washington, D.C., whom is recognized as the national son. Second to the last, Malcolm X. Malcolm X was born in 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. His father was a Baptist preacher and follower of Marcus Garvey. His family moved to Lansing, Michigan, after the Cougar family pledged against them. Through the family continued to face pledge in their community. In 1931, Malcolm's father was allegedly murdered by a white supremacy group called the Black Legionaries. Through the authorities' claim, his death was an accident. Mrs. Linda and her children were denied of Osmond's death penalty. Malcolm X was an African-American leader in the civil rights movement, minister and supporter of black nationalism. He urged his fellow black Americans to protect against white aggression. Quote unquote, by any means necessary, a stand that often put in an also the non-violent teaching of Martin Luther King Jr. His charisma and oratory skill helped him achieve a national prominence in the Nation of Islam. The belief system that merged Islam with black nationalism. After Malcolm X's assassination in 1965, his best-selling book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X. Malcolm X popularized his idea into the black history. Lastly, Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was a Jamaican-born black nationalist and the leader of the Pan-Africanism movement, which sought to unify and connect people of African descent worldwide. In the United States, he was a noted civil rights activist who founded the Negro World newspaper, a shipping company called Black Star Line, and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, or UNIA, a fraternal organization of black nationalists. As a group, they advocated for separate but equal status for persons of African ancestry, and as so they sought to establish independent black states around the world, notably in Liberia on the west coast of Africa. Thank you so much.
Once again, Ellen, for sharing with us the remarkable struggles of people who push for the change that we're now experiencing. We'll now have a Black History speech that will be done by Ms. Lorraine Watt.
Good afternoon. I am 13 years old student Lauren White from the Joy of Learning Montessori Institute Incorporated. I am in the 10th grade class. I will recite for you part of the photo President of the United States of America 2009 inaugural address by President Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Obama is a black hero and I am honored to do his 2009 inaugural speech. Our True Democrat with our campaign slogan, Yes, we can. My fellow citizens, I stand here today humbled by the task before us, grateful for the trust you have bestowed, mindful of the sacrifices by our ancestors. I thank President Bush for his service to our nation as well as the generosity and cooperation he has shown throughout this transition. For the full Americans have now taken the presidential oath. The words have been spoken during rising tides of prosperity and the still waters of peace. Yet ever so often, the oath is taken at least, gathering clouds of raging storms. At this moment, America has carried on not simply because of the skill of vision of those in high office, but because we the people have remained faithful to the ideas of our forebears and true to our founding documents. So it has been, so it must be with this generation of Americans. That we are in the midst of crisis is now well understood. Our nation is at war against a far-reaching network of violence and hatred. Our economy is badly weakened, a consequence of greed and irresponsibility on the part of some, but also our collective failure to make hard choices and prepare the nation for a new age. Homes have been lost, jobs shared, businesses shut up, our health care is too costly, our schools feel too many, and each day brings further evidence that the way we use energy strengthens our adversaries and threatens our planet. These are the indicators of crisis, such as the data in statistics. Less measurable but no less profound is a serving of confidence across our land. A nagging fear that America's decline is inevitable, that the next generation must lower its sights. Today I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many. They will not be met easily or in a short span of time. But know this, America, they will be met. On this day we gather because we have chosen hope over fear, unity of purpose over conflict and discord. On this day we come to proclaim an end to the petty grievances and false promises, the recriminations and worn-out dogmas that for far too long have strangled our politics. We remain a young nation, but in the words of Scripture, the time has come to set aside childish things. The time has come to reaffirm our enduring spirits and choose our better generation. The God-given promise that all are equal, all are free, and all deserve a chance to pursue their full measures of happiness. In reaffirming the greatness of our nation, we understand that greatness is never a given, it must be earned. Our journey has never been one of shortcuts or settling for less. It has been the path for the faint-hearted, for those that prefer leisure over work or seek only the pleasures of riches and fame. Rather, it has been the risk-takers, the doers, the makers of things. Some celebrated, but most often men and women obscuring their labor who are carrying up a long, rugged path towards prosperity and freedom. But everywhere we look, there is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action bold and swift, and we will act not only to create new jobs, but to lay new foundations for growth. We will build the roads and bridges and frames, the electrical grids and digital lines that feed our commerce and bind us together. We will restore science to its rightful place, and while technology wonders to raise healthcare qualities and lower its cost. We will harness the sun and the wind and the soil to fuel our cars and run our factories. And we will transform our schools and colleges and universities to meet the demand of a new age. All this we can do. All this we will do. As for our common defense, we reject as false the choice between our safety and our ideas, our founding fathers. Our founding fathers, faced with perils that we can scarcely imagine, drafted a charter to ensure the rule of law and a right of man. A charter expanded by the blood of generations. Those ideas still like the world, and we will not give them up for expedience's sake. We will not apologize for our way of life, nor will we waver in defense. Or for those who seek to advance their ends by inducing terror and slaughtering innocents, we say to you not that our spirit is stronger and cannot be broken. You cannot outlast us. We will defeat you. So the Muslim world, we seek a new way forward based on mutual interest and mutual respect. And to those leaders around the globe who seek to sow conflict or blame the society's ills on the West, know that the people will judge you on what you can build, not what you destroy. So those who cling to power through corruption and deceit and the silencing of dissent, know that you are on the wrong side of history, and that we will extend a hand if you are willing to unclench your faith. And to those nations like ours that enjoy relative plenty, we say we can no longer afford indifference to suffering outside our borders, but can we consume the world's resources without regard to effect? For the world has changed and we must change with it. So let us mark this day with remembrance of who we are and how far we have traveled. In this year of American's birth, in the coolest of moon, a small band of patriots followed by dying campfire on the shore of an icy river. The capital was abandoned. The enemy was advancing. The snow was thin with blood. When the outcome of our revolution was most in doubt, the father of our nation uttered these words to be read to the people. And I quote, "Let it be told to the future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue to survive, that the city and the country alarmed at one common danger come forth to meet it." Unquote. America, in the face of our common danger, in this winter of our hardship, let us remember these timeless words. With hope and virtue, let us brave once more the icy currents and endure what storms may come. Let it be told to our future generation that when we were tested, we refused to let this journey in, that we did not turn back nor did we falter. And with eyes fixed on the horizon and God's grace upon us, we carry forth this great gift of freedom and bring it back safely to future generations. Thank you. God bless you.
Powerful Liberian in again, one promise. We are prepared to walk with you.
But I'm explaining to her that she inspired those of us of the older generation, that we look forward to her leadership. We look forward to mentoring her because we need leaders for this country. We need you, the younger people, to step forward and step in that gap. You will hear from the panel discussion today about Liberians who stepped in the gap. You will be surprised the number of times Liberia has been first. We continue to be first. We look forward to you bringing another first. And we look forward to you holding what has already gone before you. Thank you. It was excellent.
So my assumption is organizers, we have our contact details. Like I said, we are prepared to work with her into this future of greatness. Thank you.
Wow. Someone said that's what the gender can do. Thank you, Ms. Doba, for such a powerful speech from one of the world's icons. We'll now have a poem that will be done by our son, B. Deeks, a student from Camp Cohort 3.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, I would like to recognize the high profile guest, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the students who are here present.
My name is Anselm Benjamin Hicks. I'm a fellow of the Kofi Annan Institute of Conflict Transformation, or 3. I have a poem that I will read as we commemorate the Black History Month. But this poem was inspired to reflect what Africans went through, what Africans went through, especially in the time of slavery. So the poem is titled, Africa, Our Home, Our Heritage. We're first to be known among the human race, starting at no other place but Africa, our home, our heritage. A family we were, a happy family we were, a beautiful culture, tradition, and love for ourselves. A view of an advanced evolution so rare, our facial features, skin color, bodily build, with a unique and beautiful human hair. We're raised to love one another, respect our fathers, and listen to our mothers. Our unity was boundless, our good intentions for each of us were countless. We realized that to be black is to aid black. It means also to respect females and honor males. Not to buy strong drinks for minors and expose our younger ones to the use and abuse of dopes. It means not exploiting each other, but developing faith in one another, going out of our way for each other, which above all was sticking together by the core, and everyone saw it as a whole. Our wish was to impact on what beauty of love was all about, and to reach its highest obtainable level that could be seen across our home continent called Akibole, our dearly beloved native Africa. And that the hopes and words of our forefathers who reminded us that with self, we must love ourselves and have a high esteem of our own worth in order to transfer this esteem to our spouses and children. And as we began the noble task of binding together in oneness and truth, harnessing all efforts and energies, we then encountered a deep misery of a human race so unknown. That race became the white man, who came from far across the deep waters and invaded our golden homeland. Countless millions of us were violently taken away. We were brutally beaten with our hands and necks tied on our way, even for a little twist, and forcibly loaded on dreaded ships. Extreme pains and sufferings we endured while going, and while others were branded with red hot iron, and thousands died. Others were shot trying to escape on the way as the trees of the green witnessed our endless cries. After long marches to the coast, day after day, we were loaded on ships the logs, shackled together with only 12 to 18 inches apart. With a voyage of 15 days, the most gruesome in human history, we were packed like sardines in the most extreme crampings, and almost indescribable stench of waste matter left to disintegrate on our persons and on others who we had no toilet or accommodation. And while many of our mothers were brave enough to resist the captors' sexual thrust and were killed on the spot, our bodies were immune against two such widespread diseases, gonorrhea and syphilis, which were unable to penetrate our blood, the blood of black people. And as we reached the final planned destination, we realized that we have entered a great slave trade market of the New World, that the Dutch, Portuguese, French, and English each bid to control and enslave us. And as we watch our fellow humans strive to maltreat us, we came face to face with the truth that those who so wish to see us march into bondage and slavery were the powers of the royal houses. And because of their plot to condemn black-skinned African people to unending slavery, the Europeans, Arabs especially, and even some Asians schemed up to block out all records of the great human past, the great African past, and that the lifestyle of blacks was viewed as a condemned race. All efforts were made for the unmitigated pressure to destroy our black family during our bondage. With the white is always right concept, our mindset always found. They crudely constructed shacks and dive flows we were forced to sleep on. Living in America, we were called different sordid names: Negro, color, Kenyans, and coons, niggers, spooks, shines, and dudes. All of these were meant to make our children confused, pushing in our community the drug, quarters, spin-off, brainwashing, way out music, and sexual overtones. We worked so hard on sugarcane and cotton plantations that our hands were raw, and there was never a time we needed to rest that our captors were fiercely watching and everything we saw. We were gunned down, legs chopped off with an axe whenever we think and scream. Sometimes tied in the sun all day without water and food, and most times were lynched. All these we suffer brutal pains that destroy some of our generations, enduring agonies, extreme manslaughters, and other brainwashing of our black human conscience. Taking it no more, we rose up like an army, marching with bold confidence and sacrifice for our children, preparing for the time when all we needed was justice and liberty, a great sense of human respect, particularly for our rights and dignity. We stood firm and worked hand in hand, giving a cause for our liberation, a campaign that the white race would not understand. With our children demonstrating and leading great uprisings, we became hopeful and courageous that gradually the scorching sun of our experience was settling down. Our voices for civil rights and liberty were raised and resounded across the nation. A twilight struggle championed by young Martin Luther King Jr., Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Nat Turner, Booker T. Washington, and Deborah Bussey, thus giving relevance to the Emancipation Proclamation. With Harriet Tubman leading thousands of our brothers and sisters to escape down the Underground Railroad side, and Rosa Parks deliberately refusing to give up her seat, sparked the famous Montgomery March at Lincoln Square, with thousands shouting, "We must overcome one day, and at last become free." Today, the true genius and destiny of the black race have been unleashed. In the Americas and across the world, the power of lies can never be stopped, nor can ever be seized. We have done great things and achieved glorious feats. In every area of humanity, we have shown our worth and dignity. We have produced great leaders and talented people such as statesmen, poets, businessmen and women, doctors, scientists, philosophers, lawyers, and inventors. Our goals were to create in the minds of our people the glory, the pomp, the splendor, and honor that was ours in a land far away from where the kidnappers carried us. From such a dreadful and demeaning past, having endured the worst of human experience with courage, having endured the worst of experience with courage and fortitude, our black race could victoriously walk out of the 400 years of white mental and physical bondage, free at last. And as we commemorate our black history, giving thought to this year's theme, Black Health and Wellness, and how far we have come, let us remember that Mother Africa is our home and our heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deeks. Africa, our home, our heritage. We'll now have spoken word that will be done by Miss Safwa Poka.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am a student of the African Methodist Episcopal University, and today I will be doing for you a piece titled "A Tribute to My Ancestors." Today I have come to dance on this soil. I mean, the remains of my ancestors that have decayed into dust. I have come with my mother's song to sing about my sweet freedom. I have come with colors to sketch pictures of brave men that wore black as a skin. With swinging arms and head, I have come to celebrate their strength that taught me to be brave, their voices that called me out to be brave, their dreams that gave me the courage to run this race. Like them, I am aware that I have the power to break barriers and carry mountains on my shoulders and fight storms to victory. For the blood of a stranger, for the blood of a warrior is what runs through my veins, and setback has no right to hold me by the foot. I am a cub of lions and lionesses that still breathe from their grave, and I roar black out loud. History might have said a lot about my people wearing chains and cruel whips and violence lashed on their backs and gunshots and rivers of blood that stain on my country's name. But that is not allowed to define me. I'm more than just a nation stigmatized with coup and civil wars and tribal discrimination. I am more than a child soldier with wrecked of joy. More than a murderess, more than criticism, because I have learned to rise after falling, to mourn, to rejoice after mourning, and to live after dying. Thank you.
Wow. We have learned to live after dying. Thank you so much, Ms. Cooker. So now I'll now turn over this part of our program to Dr. Debbie Cindy, who will now lead our panel discussion.
We ask our panelists to please now move to the Okay, are we set? Whenever I sit in this seat, I'm going to have reflections. Some of them very positive. I have to really appreciate the joy of having this special occasion. The history of great women and men in any country shape what their country becomes, but also by extension what the world has become. The question I'd like us to reflect as we listen to our very enlightened panelists for this special symposium. As you sit here, who are some of the greatest women and men communities, maybe in our country, or maybe anywhere else in the world that have made the greatest impact on you. We all come to impact at different angles. And I'm glad that we have a historian on this panel. In fact, most of these people are knowledgeable in history. I'm the only novice. I never passed history in my school. I never even thought I would be talking anything about history because my grades in history were very poor. I could never figure out how when they go BC, then the years get smaller, then as the older year, and this side the year gets bigger. It was just confusing for me. Today, I have to grapple with the realities of history. But there are so many anomalies in our history. I'm going to go to one that is particularly everyone can agree with. Liberia history tells us the first coup d'etat in Liberia was when? 1980? That's exactly the era we have in our history. The first coup in Liberia was in 1871 against President E.J. Brown. But you tell me everywhere that, oh, Liberia never had a coup before. The first coup d'etat, in 1980, the first coup d'etat. And these are the kinds of anomalies that we have grown with, that we have passed on, and there are so many of them that have made our lives where we are today. Let me just, in 1 minute before I turn over to the panelists, tell you also one of the greatest errors in our history is the failure to capture some of the most significant contributions and people who have made those contributions to us as a nation. The Lutheran Bible translation used to have a small aircraft, an air taxi that used to take the missionaries from place to place because road connectivity was very poor around the country. One day, unfortunately, this plane crashed in Liberia. 3 of the missionaries who were on board got severely broken up. Some of them with up to 6 fractures, hands, foot, and so on. There was a very important noted doctor in the Banjima area called Dr. Butu. He never attended the AMW College of Medicine, nor did he attend Harvard School of Medicine. He grew up and he never read the alphabets that we know in our language, in English. But he was one of the greatest bone specialists this world has known. These 3 missionaries were bundled up and taken to this man's village. And in 3 weeks, all of them were back on their feet, exercising the broken legs, some of them 3-4 broken pieces. Their hands were back in shape. And by the end of 1 month, all of them were fully functional. There's nowhere in Liberian history where this great medical doctor is recorded for his contribution, where our great musical arts, where is the history of Liberian music ever recorded? We talk about Liberian culture, that got reduced to having our women get naked and dance to entertain a few bourgeois. it is a duty for you and myself to correct these anomalies, give honor to where it is due, and ensure that our history, collectively, each of us have contributed to, have inherited, have learned from, is properly contextualized for our benefits. With those words, I have the extreme privilege of introducing our panelists, those who are here. Let me start from my right. Dr. Augustine Conner is Dean of the Graduate School at the African Melody Episcopal University. He's a historian, he's a professor, a researcher, and he's a mentor. On my left, unfortunately, Kamara is not here, but we have Councillor Yvette Chesin-Gure, Establishment Coordinator of the Angie Brooks International Center for Women's Empowerment and Security. This center and the person after whom this center was named was like many of the issues we are going to be talking about. A forgotten name in Liberia, and how our hearts yearn. Today, a center in the name of Angelos is doing the kind of exploits that the whole world is yearning to learn from, some of which we will be learning from the establishment coordinator. We have, on my extreme left, Mr. Ndebe Russell Allen from the Justice Reform International, advocate, seasoned practitioner, and a great mentor. Ladies and gentlemen, very pleased to have all of you serve on this very important symposium. I'm going to ask Mr. Allen, please kick the first ball. Thank you.
I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to always be called. My duty as Liberian and as human is to work for human value, human dignity, and its protection. I listened to the doctor. He rightly just said, I come from a research background internationally as a Liberian place around the global village and working on justice and security, human and personal security, even though there are a lot more that Liberia need to do. We need to rewrite the history of this country. The conflict of Liberia is not just the arm. It's the information that was not adequately given to people. We need to rewrite this history because 50% of our history were written in myth and not in facts. There was information that was left behind that still need to be captured. In the length and breadth of Liberia, when it comes to the 1,000 square miles I traveled, of the counties distributed in political subdivision, the history still remains intact, and most of whom I know is embryonic and uncontested. But the schools in the Republic of Liberia, the reading of those history is inacute. It's not sufficient. But the other guys outside this republic will explain about us, then we who in this country cannot best explain about ourselves. If I hear from Lofa, I should discuss Lofa with clarity and with distinction. But the difficulty is still remain. Dialect, when it comes to traditional language, is running out. We no more identify ourselves with our traditional and cultural values. We all have tried to identify ourselves as American or European. We are suffering seriously from identity crisis. And this crisis must be worked on, or else this country will remain subjective until you identify yourself as a black man. But let me establish this today. To be a Liberian is not a crime. To be a black man is not a crime. To be a black man is a value. It was creation who chose to create cause. Nobody was born as a racist. It's the community or the home that taught you or trained people to become a racist. But Liberia should remember in our history setting, Liberia as all, most of whom we know, we remember Liberia as the oldest African republic who maintained her stay in the scramble for Africa. She was among the few who was protecting her sovereignty. That history is written. 3 things you should remember when it comes to our Black History Month. Our Black History Month, we should remember the slave trade. We should remember the period of colony. We should remember the period of independence of African states from colonial power. We should understand that we have dialect. The parallel language should be taught. I think it's been taught in the school. But in South Africa, they got Swahili. In Ghana, they get 3. But Liberia, which one? We still need to discuss Liberia going ahead. There are notable names that we still need to go after and get it in the book of history. Liberia will be completed. Other than this, we'll be denied of understanding the true histories of this country. As they question the Lord of Liberty bring on us here, but who elect here? It still remains divisive. We need to discuss this. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission need to revisit herself. The J.J. Robert Foundation should be discussing the property ownership. The history of this country needs to be rewritten. Who was King Zulu Duma? In the book of Liberia, if we will find it. Yes, we heard about King Sao Bozo. But how can we identify those historical accounts when it's not historically written? The most recent time we're hearing about Madam Swakoko because somebody raised the attentions on that. There are a lot of rural families we have. Africa have been one place that people came and became greater from. But I remember Liberia organizing OAU in 1959. They call it the San Nicolas Conference. But Liberia had one body they call Delete. It's not written. We can't see it. Alice Ababa took the show. But 3 guys, I will call them that way. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Amasi Kuchwe of Guinea, and William V. Stockman of Liberia. Today is what we call AU. Oh, I don't know where to find that document chronologically. So I'm still questioning as to how can Liberia go to reach to where we should be reaching and take the position as Africa's oldest republic. Liberia set a history by electing the first female president in Africa. The first woman to become the 24th General Assembly black woman was Angie Brooks Manor. We continue to set history. I still remain to questions from the length of time that we existed as a republic and now. I'm hearing bicentennial. What are those accounts that we need to reflect our mind to? I just stop there for now.
do a specific swing. We have asked Dr. Bonnet to do a particular swing of this process by focusing not just on Black history in general, but with the specific context of Liberia. So, Liberia and Black history. So, we will ask Dr. Bonnet to please make it. You're welcome. It's a joy.
I probably don't need my
You're welcome. We are recording.
Oh, they're recording. Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Am I okay? No? Can you hear me? Okay. Mhm. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. This body isn't in here. The reason why I was saying that because I was here the other day speaking on some issues about leadership and governance. All right. Okay, this is what I want to do. I know we've listened to what I actually want to do, I want to pick on some of the things that have just been said here and put them within a context. And so that we can have a conversation or even a dialogue if we so desire. Professor Sandy started with misconceptions about our history. You all know one of the misconceptions has to deal with now we do not celebrate that any longer, but we used to celebrate the Matilda Newport Day. The question that we historians brought in, that we find out that yes, there was a Matilda Newport. Yes, she came here and got married with the name of Matilda Newport did not exist at that time because she was dead. That's a misconception. So I was part of a group of scholars and Liberians during the TRC explanations of regards to how do we counter our misconception that we came to some agreement. And my professor was there, Professor Guano. One of the things I disagreed with him was that because when we said we're going to no longer have a Matilda Newport holiday because of these findings. And he said, well, if we can't have a holiday, maybe we should get rid of the statue. I disagreed with him. Because I believe that the more we see certain things, the better we don't do them anymore. When Nelson Mandela came out of jail, the first thing the people said, let us break down the monument. The monument was a representation of those who were massacred. And Nelson Mandela said, no, I do not see the reason why we should put down this monument. This monument, in fact, should be a reminder that never again. So for me, I still have faith in gender. My cousin is sitting here, counselor, because even though we might disagree that she did not fire a cannon because she was there, but history is made up of all kinds of things. There's folk history and other kinds of history. So for us, this was folk history. The Romans have a folk history. The more Romans have a myth history, and that myth history, we talk about the two brothers that came together to develop what became known as Rome. So for me, my argument was, no, we need the Matilda Newport statue to be there so that we can see that one woman at one time was so powerful that we even gave her what she did not do. So that's a misconception. But there are other misconceptions quite recently. I looked at the Daily Observer recently, a misconception about the bicentennial. Whose bicentennial? Look at that. No, but this is what the Daily Observer said, that the bicentennial was a bicentennial for the independence of Liberia. That is wrong. The bicentennial was not a bicentennial for the independence of Liberia. The bicentennial is the bicentennial for the founding of Liberia. That's a misconception. And there was another misconception. The misconception that the settlers founded Liberia, that's a misconception. The ACS and the government of the United States founded Liberia. But the settlers settled in what was founded. That's a misconception. So I just thought that to begin the story, we must begin to look at some of these misconceptions. Because like Professor Sandy said, there are a lot of them. So where do we begin to talk about Liberia in Black history? I will start with what Brother Russell started with, what the other brother who read the poem started with. I will start with slavery in the United States. That's where I will start. Why will I start with slavery in the United States? Because we saw through the 17th and the 18th century, African peoples were kidnapped, particularly around the West Coast. And they were stranded into the Americas, the American colonies. And they were exploited. But not only that they were exploited and they became indentured servants. And they labor and they work in those plantations, those crops, tobacco, cotton, sugar. But then what happened as the numbers began to grow, in fact, there's an author by the name of Paul Lovejoy in the West African, he talks about the 5,000 Africans that were taken by the coastal area. And as their numbers began to grow, we begin to see what Russell and others were talking about protest. But then in the 1700s, we began to see the abolition of the slave trade. So here we can talk about William Wilberforce. Here we can talk about Lord Mansfield. But we can also talk about the Haitian Revolution in 1804, where a black man, Toussaint Louverture, overturned the French colonies, which showed black people that you cannot only have the ability to free yourself, but you also have the ability to govern yourself. And this was inspirational. In fact, we also have a Nigerian by the name of Olado Equiano who also fought his freedom. So the point that I'm making, slavery was harsh. He talks about the shackles. He talks about the way they were treated. And because of the way they were treated, and now they've seen the light, abolition has come, the US government began to think, now what do we do with these growing numbers that were being freed? Because by the 1800s, many slaves were buying their freedom, but they were also being free. So the question becomes, what do we do with this number? There were two options the US government came up with. The first option was, maybe we need to set aside a place where we can put them there. We can locate them into some place. But then there was the second option, because the first option, as far as they were concerned, it was not going to work, because there were a lot of protests that were going on, and a lot of advocacy. So then the US government thought the second option would now be to send them back to their homeland in Africa. And this was what brought about the Repatriated Project. How was the Repatriated Project organized? First in 1816, some authors will say 1817, the American Colonization Society was formed by white men. People like Henry Clay, people like Dan Webster, people like John Randolph. So the organization was established. But not only that the organization was established, where we see even the US government playing a role. Thomas Jefferson, one of the presidents, said, "This is a good thing. I endorse the goals of the American Colonization Society." James Monroe, another president, who, as a result of his funding, gave private-public funding to the organization. Today we name Monrovia after him, James Monroe. And so we saw the ACS, the American Colonization Society, was given a mandate. What was the mandate? The mandate was for them to carry out the Repatriated Project. Take these free Africans back to Africa. And so we saw the implementation of this Repatriated Project. The experiment was made. In fact, we are told by February 6, 1820, there were about 88 Africans that were taken away from New York with 3 of the society members to experiment this project. Where did they go? They went to Sierra Leone. What happened in Sierra Leone? They were not able to make it because many of them died of malaria. And so, you know the name, Lieutenant Stockton and others said, maybe we need to go to the Grand Coast. We've heard about a place known as Grand Coast. The Portuguese have told us about the Grand Coast. That's where we must go. So Liberia now was called the Grand Coast. Why the Grand Coast? Because of the Malagueta pepper. That's why I like pepper. I eat pepper like anything else, man. Sometimes people say I'm a crewman. Yes, I'm a crewman. Because I know of Malagueta pepper. So they moved to the Grand Coast. And as this movement, we saw the encounter encounter between Stockholm, and there were one of our eminent colleagues who is at the foreign ministry came up with some writing quite recently that I read, and he was saying two people were very important in the purchasing of Providence Island. He said Elijah Johnson and King Saul Bosu. Because had it not been for them, there would not be the settlements that we see. So that the settlements of Millburg, the settlements of Arlington, the settlement of Closerville, all of these became possible because of these heroes. And so, as they established themselves in these areas, they began to encounter conflict. And this is the point that is very important, that as more and more settlers began to come, in fact, we were told by February 22nd, between 1821 to 1838, there were about 20,000 settlers that came. There was an encounter. There were conflicts. There were tension. Why? Because the new group that was coming was bringing a different culture. The new group that was coming was bringing a new economy. The new group that was coming was bringing a new politics. A new group that was coming was bringing a social dispensation that was different. They were trying to impose culture. Well, that's what they knew. They were bringing capitalism as opposed to communism. They were bringing the question of representation. In fact, many of the indigenous peoples who were already on the ground were not given representation. And so there were conflicts. But be it made that there were these conflicts, we saw state building. And I think this is where we have to move on. And this is where we have to make our history very authentic. Yes, there were conflicts between those that came and those who were on the ground, those 16 or 15 or how many ethnic groups that were there. Nevertheless, there was state building. And as the establishment of this state building, we begin to see a movement to nation building. But it has to be known that citizenship was not given to these various ethnic groups not until in 1947. Even though we gained our independence in 1847. So the point that I want to make, and I might want to conclude on, is the fact that between 1847, these tensions continued to happen. Why? Because the settlers dominated, if I can use that word. I know my sister, one time I used that, we were writing a compendium, and he says, this word is too hard. I said, okay, counselor, tell me which word you want me to write. But if you look at the settlers, they dominated every aspect of life in the establishment state. Economic, political, social. And so as a result of that, we saw in 1980, there was these tensions that were going on that some groups thought we need to address this. And that's what brought the other coup that Professor Sandy was talking about and ended the settlers' regime. So let me end up with something that Brother Russell said, do I have hope? I probably will say there needs to be an undertaking. There needs to be an undertaking of a reconciliation, including between those Africans that came and those various African ethnic groups that were already on the ground. Why? He mentioned something about, if you look, for example, our national symbols, they still remain the cultural and historical experience, or they are expressed in the historical and cultural experience of the settlers. So there are questions. So that when you look at the flag of Liberia, when you look at the motto that he was talking about, when you look at the emblem, even when you look at the highest national order that is awarded, still continues to remain in the historical and cultural experience of the Africans that came. And that's the reason why that prompted me to write Whose Bicentennial? Because the bicentennial was for whom? The bicentennial was to just appreciate one group. But there were many Africans that came. Some Africans came from the Caribbean, some Africans came from Nigeria, some Africans came from Sweden. So whose bicentennial? This was a time for reconciliation. Thank you.
Indeed, we have already applauded and said thank you, but I still would like to say it from this chair, because we are here to get all of these perspectives, and it's very, very wonderful. Thank you so much. We better look into this, and you fed us. I want to go to call on Councillor Jason Red, establishment coordinator at Manjibrook Center, who will now give us the intervention into this auspicious occasion.
Once again, good afternoon to everybody. To this distinguished panel, good afternoon. You heard from two of the distinguished panel, and especially Dr. Conner, in whose bicentennial is. It's funny that he should say that, because I think that resonates with all of us as to whose bicentennial is. But let me just give you some history of Liberia and where we're coming from, so you can know where you are going. Liberia, first of all, was the first independent African country on the continent. I'm sure you all know that. We had the first open door policy. We were the first to own our own national airlines, Air Liberia. We were the first to establish a free zone on the continent, done about the same time as Dubai. I'm sure some of you know Dubai. You see where Dubai is today? You see where we are. Okay. We had the first one-stop clearinghouse, the National Investment Commission, on the continent. We had the first free port on the continent. We had the first maritime program on the continent. We were the world's largest maritime program. We had the first corporate registry on the continent. We are a founding member of of the League of Nations, or as you know, the United Nations. We were the only independent country at the time of the founding of the United Nations. Independent Black African country. We originated the concept of the Organization of African Unity, now called the African Union. You heard my colleague here talk about the Senegal Conference. Some of us have lived that history. Some of us have been sitting there and listening when these giants talked, and when they moved, and when they did things. I will give you personal insights. Kwame Nkrumah stayed in my house many times. When he came during Ghana's independence, before the independence, and even after the independence. So some of us were privileged to have front row seat when some of these things were going on. Okay? When he came for the Senegal Conference, he stayed at my house. So I'm telling you, some of us had first row seat. We know what Tubman did. And even though we all know he stayed there way too long, but some of the things he did were really outstanding. We then we originated the concept of the African Development Bank. I'm sure you all know about the African Development Bank and what it does now today. It was Liberia that thought of the concept of the African Development Bank. We originated the concept of the Economic Community of West African States. Romeo Horton, right on the bypass here. Romeo Horton brought that concept up of ECOWAS and worked tirelessly to see that it comes to creation. Okay, so ECOWAS was thought of and brought to creation by Liberia. We aided the liberation of many African countries, and I'm talking about South Africa. We even went ahead and broke diplomatic relationship with so many countries because of South Africa. We gave South African freedom fighters their passports, without which they could do nothing, because they had no identity cards outside of South Africa. They could not travel from place to place. Many of them landed in Liberia. Liberia immediately gave them Liberian citizenship, and we gave them our passports. Mccain, if you read about the freedom of South Africa, Mccain was the leader of the ANC. He was my professor here at the University of Liberia. Because when they started chasing him to kill him, he came to Liberia. And Liberia gave him a job at the University of Liberia. And he taught us in political science. And he was one of the top freedom fighters in South Africa. You had Mara Makiba, Hugh Masekela, all of them lived in Liberia. All of them carried, till this day, Liberian passports. Okay. We had the first woman to act as president of Liberia. I know many of you can tell me who it is. Who? No, she never acted as president of Liberia. Not even secretary. Let me tell you who was the first person to act as president of Liberia. Her name was Edith Harris. She was secretary of Public Works. Secretary of Public Works. President Tubman was leaving to go on a mission. And I don't know what got in his head. All of a sudden he decided Edith Harris would be acting while he was gone. And he appointed her to act as president of Liberia. This was in the 60s. First time on the continent, first time the world saw a woman acting as president. Okay. The first woman to be appointed as president is Ruth Perry. The first woman to be elected as president is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So you have women in this. We must also remember our language, the Bai language. And I'm saying Bai language, and I'm looking at you all, and if I ask you all, who am I, when you come to our ethnicity, what would you say? You say Congo, right? Why would my parents. Wonderful. But let me tell you who I am. I am the great-great-granddaughter of King Solo Duma of the 5 Day tribe. That's who I am. But I'm also the great-great-granddaughter of Elijah Johnson and Henry Richard Wright Johnson, President of the Republic of Liberia. So you all have decided that I'm either one or the other, I'm not, I'm both. I'm all of them. I want you all to know, and this is very important, at age 5 years old, my parents decided that I would go abroad to go to school. The one thing my mother sat me down, and she never forgot her 5 traditions, and she made it clear that she would buy. And she said to me, you're going to England, and you better behave yourself. I tell people I was country before country was cool. I wore my lapas in England, I wore it in America, I wore it everywhere around the world. Because like my mother said, I represent Liberia. And I want to say to each of you, you represent Liberia. Represent us well. Let people know who we are. We are not nobodies. We are first in so many things before other people had. Remember our language, the Bai language, one of which is now in a museum in Germany. Why? Because it was used during World War II by the Americans for the coding, and it was never broken. It was the only thing that the Germans could never break, was the Bai language. And if you go to Germany in the museum, you will see the Bai language there. Okay? We also had the first and only African woman president of the United Nations General Assembly. You know that, Angie Brooks. We have the first chair of ECOWAS FemWise. ECOWAS FemWise came into being about four years ago. I became chair, the first chair of ECOWAS FemWise. FemWise is a network of mediators throughout the 16 countries of ECOWAS, of women mediators. Please remember, part of Angie Brooks' portfolio is international peace and security. And therefore, we chair a lot of things in international peace and security. We also have the award-winning The Women's Situation Room, where for the first time women have come to the table en masse and take over their countries during elections to prevent electoral violence. That is the Women's Situation Room, and it's under Angie Brooks. It's a creation of Angie Brooks, and we export it to countries throughout Africa under the mandate of the African Union. We have the first woman to sign a peace accord in Africa, Teresa Lee Sherman, when she signed the peace accord for Liberia. The first woman member of the United States Supreme Court Bar. I was the first African woman member of the United States Supreme Court Bar. This is just to bring to everybody's attention. Liberia has to stop. We're not going to stop. You heard the different young people today who are talking, and that shows you that we have hope. It shows you that Liberia is going to continue to rise. That no matter what else is going on, we are going to overcome. We are going to be one. I stand before you as one. And I'm saying we are one. Some of us did not grow up with country mentality because we had both. We had both. And we grew up with the mentality, the so-called hunger mentality, the so-called country mentality was something for which we could be very proud of. And we exported it, and we were proud, and we stood up for it. So I'm saying to you all, know your history. Know you have a lot to be proud of. But once again, please let us create. Be creators. Dr. Conner brought up the whole matter of reconciliation, even though it was just a minute in it. But I think he's right in terms of this bicentennial is a missed opportunity for reconciliation. And we have to be serious about reconciliation. And we have to know, let's put it down on the table. Lots of people here are saying, oh, the settlers did this and did that. They did. There was a lot of missteps. A lot of missteps. There was cruelty. All of that was there. And you cannot deny it. Okay? But then don't forget, our indigenous side, there was a lot of cruelty there. And since I'm both, I can tell you it. The other people may be scared to tell you it. I will tell you it. Because you see, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Solu Tuma, was a slave trader. He owned slaves because he was a warrior. And he was conquering all the time, and he was fighting all the time. And in our tradition in the fire at the time, we just went ahead when we conquered somebody, you became our slaves. Those we took in became slaves of the fire. So he just didn't want to just keep people, he started trading them. However, our concept of slave was not the American concept of slave. The way we treated our slaves was not the way the Americans treated our slaves. Our slaves became part of our household. And they were treated with dignity. We didn't tie them, beat them, do all those things. So when he started trading his slaves and sending them off on the slave ships, he was thinking slave as he had slaves. He did not know the extent of the cruelty that my people went through when they went on these slave ships. That is a fact. And you can dig it up. It's a historical fact. We had lots of chiefs that were involved in slave trading. But however, the concept of slavery was not the American concept of slavery. I will leave you with that because I don't want to take up too much. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. That one almost a lot of fire because we are here almost one of next up. All right. We've got the presentations. It's time to do our interactions. I will kindly ask for our team members to take the mic. And let me make this so that it really goes around the participatory. Please be very, very brief so that more people can participate. The main point you want to stress it. Don't give a history, don't give analysis, just take the point you want to touch. It could be in 3 words, but it will say what you mean. Okay? Thank you. Let's start the first thing right there. Here we have
I want to know the recreate of the 1871 Good Legal Civil Rights.
Thank you.